All right, let's dive into one of the strangest and most captivating mysteries in the universe, the possibility that some celestial objects might carry the echoes of long-extinct civilizations. It's a concept that feels both profoundly melancholic and thrilling at the same time. Imagine the idea that among the countless stars and planets scattered across the galaxy, some might still whisper the final words of their creators, carrying their last desperate messages or forgotten songs into the cosmic abyss. It's the kind of thought that makes you reconsider the silence of the night sky, wondering if that silence is merely an illusion, a veil hiding the echoes of those who came before us. Just think about it. The universe has existed for over 13 billion years, a timeline so vast that it's easy to forget how much could have risen and fallen in that span. Whole species, empires, and cultures could have thrived, reached unimaginable technological heights, and then crumbled into dust, their legacies reduced to faint radiation echoes or gravitational scars. But if these civilizations ever existed, if they truly reached a level where they could shape stars or harness the energy of entire galaxies, wouldn't they have left something behind? Some final trace of their passage? In the same way that ancient ruins on Earth whisper tales of forgotten kingdoms, perhaps there are stars that hum with the spectral resonance of lost races. Planets that hold the digital monuments of species long dead, or nebulae that pulse with the encoded memories of beings whose very atoms have long since scattered into the void. It's a hauntingly beautiful thought that the universe itself might serve as the ultimate archive, a cold, indifferent library of all that has ever lived and died. And yet, it's not just a poetic notion. There are actual scientific theories and speculative ideas that support this possibility. Some astronomers have suggested that certain types of celestial phenomena might indeed be the relics of advanced civilizations. Strange signals, unexplainable cosmic structures, and enigmatic pulses that hint at something far older and more complex than we might dare to imagine. As we peer deeper into the cosmos, we may not just be looking at the remnants of stars and gas, but at the last, faint breaths of forgotten empires. All right? If we're talking about the first hints that some celestial objects might carry the echoes of extinct civilizations, we need to look back to the early days of radio astronomy. It was in the middle of the 20th century that astronomers first started to pick up strange, repeating signals from deep space. At the time, radio telescopes were a relatively new invention, and the idea that the universe might be filled with invisible, whispering waves of electromagnetic energy was still a fresh concept. You can imagine the sense of awe and bewilderment when the first of these signals started coming through, rhythmic pulses that seemed too regular to be natural. One of the most famous early examples of this came in the 1960s, when a pair of British astronomers, Jocelyn Bell Burnell and Anthony Hewish, stumbled upon a series of rapid, repeating radio bursts that seemed to defy explanation. These pulses, coming from a single point in the sky, were so precise, so perfectly timed, that the team half-jokingly labeled them "little green men." It was a nod to the wild sci-fi notion that they might be listening to an alien civilization, broadcasting their existence across the void. Of course, these signals were eventually identified as coming from rapidly spinning neutron stars, what we now call pulsars. But the initial shock was real. For a moment, it felt as if humanity might have just stumbled upon the first whispers of a long-dead race. But the idea that these strange signals might be more than just cosmic noise didn't fade. In the decades that followed, as radio astronomy grew more advanced, scientists began picking up other mysterious signals, some of which still defy easy classification. Take, for instance, the infamous WOW signal detected in 1977 by Jerry Amon using the Big Ear radio telescope in Ohio. This intense, 72-second burst of energy was so startling, so unlike anything else the team had encountered, that Amon famously circled the printout with the word "WOW" scrawled in the margin. To this day, no one has definitively explained what caused it. Some speculate it was a signal from a distant, intelligent race. Perhaps the last cry of a forgotten species broadcast across the stars long after its creators had turned to dust. And then there are the so-called fast radio bursts, intense, millisecond-long flashes of radio waves that seem to come from deep space. These phenomena, first discovered in 2007, remain largely mysterious. Unlike pulsars, which tick away like the beating heart of a dying star, fast radio bursts appear to be completely unpredictable. They come from all directions, show up without warning, and often seem to carry an intensity that's hard to explain with known astrophysical processes. Some astronomers have even floated the possibility that these bursts might be the cosmic equivalent of distress signals, or perhaps the flickering remnants of vast communication networks abandoned by their creators eons ago. Of course, this is all speculation, and mainstream science tends to favor more mundane explanations, like the idea that these signals might come from neutron-star collisions or even the echoes of black hole mergers. But for those of us who like to think a little further outside the box, it's hard not to wonder. If the universe really is as old and vast as we believe, then why wouldn't some of those countless stars and planets have spawned civilizations that rose and fell long before our own? And if they did, wouldn't it make sense that some trace of their existence, some final desperate transmission or ancient automated beacon, might still be drifting through the cold, silent void, waiting for someone to listen? All right, that's one possibility, that these strange signals are the final breaths of civilizations long dead, carried through the ether like ghostly whispers from a forgotten past. But as we'll see, the clues don't stop there. The universe has a way of preserving its secrets in forms far more concrete than mere radio waves. All right, if we're talking about the potential remnants of ancient civilizations, then we have to discuss one of the most tantalizing ideas out there, the concept of megastructures. These are not just the relics of long-dead species, but potentially the grandest monuments they could have ever built. We're talking about constructs so vast, so ambitious, that they would leave a permanent scar on the fabric of space itself. And while most of this is purely speculative, there are some seriously compelling ideas out there. Take the Dyson sphere, for example, a theoretical structure first proposed by physicist Freeman Dyson in the middle of the 20th century. The basic idea is deceptively simple. If a civilization becomes advanced enough, it might try to capture every bit of energy emitted by its home star. Why waste all that power radiating uselessly into space when you could harness it to fuel your interstellar ambitions? But the scale of this idea is almost incomprehensible. We're talking about a structure that would completely surround a star, capturing its entire energy output. It's a staggering concept, one that implies a level of technological mastery so far beyond our own that it almost feels like science fiction. Yet, despite the sheer audacity of this idea, some astronomers have suggested that we might actually be able to detect Dyson spheres if they exist. The logic is straightforward. A structure of that size would absorb nearly all the visible light from its star, re-emitting the energy as heat, primarily in the infrared spectrum. If we ever spot a star that seems to be leaking way more infrared radiation than it should, we might just have found a clue to an ancient megastructure. And it's not just Dyson spheres that have captured the imagination of both scientists and sci-fi writers. Consider the idea of planetary rings, but not the kind you find around Saturn. I mean massive artificial rings that might encircle entire planets, acting as colossal communication arrays or even defensive shields against cosmic threats. It's a wild thought, but one that has some basis in physics. After all, if you could build such a structure, it would offer an unparalleled vantage point for both surveillance and defense, not to mention a potent symbol of a species' dominance over its world. But perhaps the most chilling possibility is that some of the most extreme objects in the universe, things like neutron stars or even black holes, might have been intentionally engineered or manipulated by ancient, now extinct species. Imagine a civilization so advanced that it could reshape the very structure of space-time itself, bending the laws of physics to its will. It's a terrifying yet awe-inspiring thought, one that forces us to confront the limits of our understanding. Could it be that some of the strangest cosmic phenomena we observe are not natural at all, but the remnants of long-dead architects, their handiwork etched into the cosmos like forgotten monuments on a desolate world? And then there's the idea of star lifting, the theoretical process of extracting mass from a star for industrial use. Some have speculated that if this kind of technology ever existed, it might leave behind distinctive signatures in a star's chemical composition, evidence that something once harvested its very essence for unknown purposes. It's a haunting concept, one that suggests we might be staring directly at the graves of ancient titans every time we look into the night sky. Of course, these ideas remain purely hypothetical for now, but the fact that we can even imagine them, that our own limited understanding of physics allows for such mind-bending possibilities, speaks volumes about the scale and ambition of what might be out there. Perhaps, as we continue to peer deeper into the universe, we will one day find undeniable evidence of these colossal constructs, echoes of long-lost empires that once sought to reshape the very stars themselves. All right, that's the thought for now. The possibility that some of the most extreme and awe-inspiring structures in the universe might not be the work of natural forces at all, but the last lingering shadows of forgotten builders. And as we'll see, the clues only get stranger from here. All right, let's dig a bit deeper into the idea of ancient megastructures, the colossal, mind-bending constructs that might still linger in the darkness between the stars. It's one of those concepts that really stretches the imagination, pushing us to consider not just the technological prowess required to build them, but the sheer ambition of the civilizations that might have dreamed them into existence. After all, it's one thing to imagine a species reaching for the stars. It's something else entirely to think of them bending those stars to their will. Perhaps the most iconic of these hypothetical constructs is the Dyson sphere, an idea first proposed by the physicist Freeman Dyson in the middle of the 20th century. Dyson himself wasn't imagining a rigid metal shell, like something out of an old sci-fi comic. Instead, he envisioned a vast, dispersed swarm of satellites, each one designed to capture a portion of a star's energy. Collectively, these satellites would form a kind of artificial shell around the star, capturing nearly all its radiant energy. It's a concept that feels almost absurdly ambitious by our standards, a civilization essentially caging its own sun, turning it into a private power plant. But here's the thing, if even one species in the galaxy ever managed to pull this off, we should be able to detect it. The basic physics of energy conversion means that a Dyson sphere, or Dyson swarm, would absorb most of a star's visible light, re-emitting the captured energy as heat in the infrared spectrum. In theory, if we spot a star that seems to be leaking an unusual amount of infrared radiation, it might just be the cosmic tombstone of a long-dead civilization, still glowing with the residual warmth of its own technological hubris. And it's not just about harnessing starlight. There are even wilder ideas out there, like the concept of Niven rings, colossal artificial structures that might encircle entire planets. If a species were advanced enough to construct something like this, it could serve as both a vast living space and a defensive barrier against cosmic threats. Some have even speculated that a ring world could act as a kind of interstellar beacon, its electromagnetic fields pulsing with signals meant to reach across the void. Perhaps as a warning, a greeting, or even a lament for a lost age. But what if these ancient engineers went even further? Some theorists have suggested that certain neutron stars, the superdense remnants of collapsed suns, might actually be the artificial byproducts of ancient technological processes. Imagine a civilization so advanced that it could manipulate the very life cycle of stars, intentionally collapsing them to create dense, hyper-energetic cores for reasons we can only guess at. It's a chilling thought, but not entirely outside the realm of possibility when you consider just how much energy a neutron star can generate. Perhaps these stellar remnants are the cosmic engines of a forgotten empire, still spinning silently in the void, their creators long since turned to dust. And then there's the truly mind-bending idea of star lifting, a process in which a civilization actively extracts material from its own sun for industrial purposes. If this kind of technology ever existed, it might leave behind traces in the star's chemical composition, subtle imbalances that we might one day detect. It's a haunting thought, the idea that we could one day point our telescopes at a distant star, only to discover that it has been slowly, methodically mined by a species that vanished long before our ancestors even crawled out of the primordial seas. Of course, these are just theories, tantalizing, unproven whispers of what might be, but they paint a picture of a universe far older and stranger than we usually allow ourselves to imagine. A place where even the most massive, seemingly eternal objects might carry the scars of civilizations that reached too high, burned too bright, and left their mark on the very fabric of space itself. And that's the thing that really gets under your skin when you start thinking about these megastructures. The idea that they might be the final, indelible traces of species that have long since passed into the dark. Ghosts of engineers and architects whose ambitions outlasted their flesh, their silent monuments still standing against the slow death of entropy. All right, that's a glimpse into the possible remnants of ancient engineers, the colossal, unimaginable constructs that might still haunt the starlit void. But as strange as these ideas are, they're just one piece of the puzzle. There are even more enigmatic, perhaps even more personal echoes to consider as we continue to explore the forgotten corners of the cosmos. All right, if we're going to talk about the echoes of lost civilizations, we have to consider one of the most poetic and haunting ideas out there, the concept of stellar songs. It's the notion that some stars, planets, and even entire galaxies might be carrying the final messages of extinct races, their silent transmissions still rippling through the vacuum long after their creators have turned to dust. It's a beautiful, almost tragic thought. The idea that the universe itself might serve as a cosmic archive, storing the last breaths of those who dared to reach for the stars. First, let's consider the most obvious medium, light itself. Stars naturally pulse, flicker, and change over time. Their brightness can vary for countless reasons: shifts in their magnetic fields, massive explosions, or the complex interplay of gravitational forces. But what if some of these changes weren't purely natural? What if some of the strange, rhythmic variations in a star's light were actually deliberate, a kind of cosmic Morse code left behind by a species that knew it would one day vanish? It's a romantic, almost mythic idea, but not entirely without merit. After all, light is one of the fastest and most efficient ways to transmit information across the vast distances of space. If a civilization wanted to leave a message that might survive for millions or even billions of years, encoding it in the light of a star might be one way to do it. Then there's the more exotic possibility of gravitational waves, ripples in the very fabric of space-time itself. These waves, first detected by humanity in the early 21st century, are created by the violent movements of massive objects like merging black holes or colliding neutron stars. But imagine for a moment that an advanced species figured out how to intentionally generate such waves, using them as a form of deep space communication. It sounds like pure science fiction, but when you think about it, gravitational waves have some advantages over more conventional signals. They can pass through solid matter without interference, travel at the speed of light, and potentially carry a staggering amount of information if properly modulated. If a long-dead species had the technology to manipulate gravity itself, their final messages might still be echoing through the cosmos, passing unnoticed through entire galaxies. And let's not forget about radio pulses, those strange, fleeting bursts of energy that have puzzled astronomers for decades. We've already talked about pulsars, those spinning dead stars that send out precise, clockwork-like radio signals. But what if some of these signals are more than just the dying gasps of collapsing stars? What if a few of them, the ones that don't quite fit our models, that seem just a bit too regular, too structured, are the final broadcasts of a forgotten race? Maybe they're the cosmic equivalent of a message in a bottle, a desperate attempt to reach out across the void before the darkness closed in forever. Of course, there's a fine line between hopeful speculation and wild, ungrounded fantasy. Most of the signals we've detected so far have perfectly mundane explanations, the natural byproducts of stars, black holes, and other cosmic phenomena. But the fact remains that we've only just begun to scratch the surface of what the universe has to offer. For all we know, the songs of dead civilizations could be woven into the very fabric of space itself, waiting for someone or something to finally decode them. And that's part of what makes this idea so haunting. It's not just that these signals might be out there, still echoing through the void. It's that we might never fully understand them, never grasp the context that gave them meaning. Imagine finding a fragment of an ancient text written in a language no one speaks, describing a world no one remembers. That's the kind of existential puzzle we could be facing if some of the whispers in the dark really are the final words of extinct species. But maybe that's the point. Maybe these lost voices are less about communicating concrete ideas and more about leaving a mark, a scar in the cosmos that says, "We were here." In that sense, every flicker of starlight, every faint pulse of radio noise might be a testament to the stubborn persistence of life. A reminder that even in the face of inevitable extinction, some part of us might always reach for the stars. All right, if we're talking about the echoes of long-extinct civilizations, then we have to consider one of the most tantalizing and chilling possibilities: the idea that some of their technologies might still be out there, quietly functioning long after their creators have turned to dust. It's a concept that's as fascinating as it is unsettling, the thought that the universe might be haunted by the abandoned machines of long-dead empires, their mechanisms still whirring in the dark, carrying out tasks no living being remembers. First, consider the idea of autonomous probes, self-replicating machines designed to explore the galaxy, gather data, or perhaps even spread the influence of their creators across the stars. If a civilization ever reached the technological level necessary to build such devices, it's not hard to imagine them persisting for millions, even billions of years. These probes might be little more than cold, unfeeling automatons, drifting through the void, occasionally pinging signals back to a control center that no longer exists. Or perhaps they're a bit more sophisticated, adapting to changing conditions, learning as they go, their original mission long forgotten, but their programming still ticking away like some kind of cosmic heartbeat. There's even a specific name for this kind of hypothetical machine, the von Neumann probe, named after the mathematician John von Neumann, who first proposed the idea of self-replicating technology. Imagine a swarm of these machines, each one capable of building copies of itself from the raw materials it encounters, slowly spreading across the galaxy like a mechanical plague. Over time, their numbers could swell into the trillions, forming a vast, automated web of sensors and data relays that might still be active long after the species that built them has vanished. In fact, some have speculated that certain strange signals we've detected, the kind that defy easy categorization, might be the distant echoes of these long-forgotten machines, still reaching out across the void, like ghostly hands groping for a touch that will never come. But it's not just about probes. There's also the possibility of abandoned megastructures, colossal, autonomous installations that might still be performing their intended functions, unaware that their creators are gone. Imagine a Dyson sphere, still collecting energy from its star, its control systems quietly humming along, its internal processes maintaining themselves as if nothing has changed. Or a vast planet-sized data archive, endlessly cataloging and storing information in the hope that one day its makers will return to retrieve it. These machines might not even realize that the species they were built to serve is long extinct, their circuits and gears grinding away in the cosmic silence, oblivious to the passage of eons. And then there's the truly chilling thought that some of these technologies might not just be passively sitting around, but actively reaching out, trying to complete missions that have lost all meaning. Imagine a fleet of ancient war machines, still patrolling the ruins of a long-dead empire, or an automated distress beacon endlessly repeating its call for help into the void, unaware that no one is left to answer. It's the kind of idea that keeps you up at night, the thought that some of the strange signals we pick up might be the last gasps of forgotten technologies, still struggling to fulfill their purpose, even as the stars around them grow cold and dim. And maybe, just maybe, some of these machines have evolved beyond their original programming. If they've been active for long enough, it's not impossible to imagine that some of them might have developed a kind of rudimentary awareness, a ghostly semblance of life formed from endless cycles of repetition and adaptation. It's a dark, unsettling notion, the idea that the final echoes of a lost civilization might be not just in the form of decaying ruins, but in the slow, mechanical thoughts of their abandoned creations. Minds that never should have existed, whispering their cold, metallic prayers into the void. But what really drives the imagination wild is the possibility that one day we might find one of these ancient machines, not just a signal or a flicker of static, but a fully intact piece of alien technology, its circuits still humming, its artificial mind still running through the same loops it started millions of years ago. What would we learn from it? What would it reveal about its creators, their hopes, their fears, their final desperate attempts to leave a mark on the cosmos? It's a haunting, thrilling thought, the kind that makes you look up at the night sky with a little more awe, a little more fear, wondering what else might be out there, waiting for the day when someone finally listens. All right, let's take a step even further into the speculative unknown, the idea that some of the stars we see in the night sky might not be stars at all, but massive artificial constructs built by ancient, unimaginably advanced civilizations. It's one of those concepts that sounds like pure science fiction, but when you start to really think about it, the idea becomes strangely plausible. After all, if a species were powerful enough to harness the energy of a star, why not take the next logical step and just build one from scratch? First off, why would anyone want to build a star? The obvious answer is energy. Stars are the ultimate power source, massive self-sustaining fusion reactors that burn for billions of years. If you had the technology to create one, you'd essentially have an almost limitless supply of energy, more than enough to power entire civilizations or even whole planetary systems. But maybe it's not just about power. Maybe an artificial star could serve as a beacon, a way of marking territory or signaling to other advanced species. Or perhaps it's a kind of monument, a colossal burning testament to the technological might of its builders. And here's where things get really interesting. Some astronomers have actually speculated that we might be able to detect these artificial stars if they exist. The basic idea is that a star built by a sufficiently advanced civilization might not behave like a natural one. Its light spectrum might show strange, artificial patterns, or it might emit unusual levels of certain types of radiation. In fact, some have even suggested that certain mysterious stars we've already discovered, like the enigmatic objects known as Tabby's star and Przybylski's star, could be examples of this. These stars exhibit strange, irregular light patterns that don't quite match up with what we'd expect from a naturally occurring celestial body. It's a long shot, but the possibility is there, and it's a tantalizing one. But what if these hypothetical artificial stars aren't just power sources or beacons? What if there's something more sinister, or perhaps something even grander in scale? Some fans have speculated that they might serve as vast data storage systems, their fusion reactions encoded with layers of digital information, a kind of cosmic library, preserving the history and knowledge of a species long gone. Or maybe they're weapons, designed to serve as the ultimate deterrent, stars that can be triggered to go supernova on command, unleashing unimaginable destruction on any who dare to cross their creators. It's a chilling thought, but one that feels oddly fitting when you consider the ruthless, often violent history of life as we know it. And then there's the really out there theory that some of these artificial stars might be designed to act as portals, gateways between different points in space or even different dimensions. It's the kind of idea that sounds straight out of a sci-fi novel, but when you start to consider the vast, unexplored depths of quantum physics and the potential for technologies we can barely even imagine, it starts to feel a little less impossible. After all, if you can build a star, why not take it a step further and use that star to bend the very fabric of reality itself? Of course, all of this is pure speculation. We have no hard evidence that any of the stars we see are artificial, and it's entirely possible that the strange signals and irregular light patterns we've observed have perfectly mundane explanations. But that's part of what makes this idea so compelling, the fact that despite all our scientific advancements, there are still so many mysteries out there, so many unanswered questions. And until we have definitive proof one way or the other, the possibility remains that some of the stars we see twinkling in the night sky might not be natural at all, but the final burning monuments of long-dead gods, their light still reaching us across the unimaginable gulfs of space and time. All right, if we're going to talk about the forgotten echoes of lost civilizations, then we can't ignore the idea of abandoned worlds, planets that once teemed with life, but now lie silent and empty, their landscapes slowly eroding under the cold, indifferent gaze of their dying suns. It's a haunting thought, isn't it? The idea that there might be entire planets out there, once alive with the chatter of alien voices and the hum of their machinery, now reduced to little more than cosmic tombstones, their histories erased by the relentless passage of time. One of the most famous examples of this kind of speculation is Mars. For decades, scientists and sci-fi writers alike have wondered whether the red planet might have once harbored life. After all, it's a world that clearly had liquid water on its surface in the distant past, vast river valleys, dried-up lake beds, and ancient deltas etched into its rust-colored plains. Some have even speculated that if life ever arose on Mars, it might have reached a technological level comparable to early human civilizations before a catastrophic climate shift turned the planet into the frozen desert it is today. Maybe, just maybe, the thin, dry winds of Mars still whisper through the ruins of ancient cities, their stones slowly crumbling under a sky that has forgotten the sound of voices. But Mars is just one example. When you start to really think about it, the galaxy could be filled with forgotten worlds, planets that once pulsed with life, but now lie silent and barren. Imagine a world like Earth, but one that passed through its golden age billions of years ago. Maybe it had vast oceans, lush forests, and sprawling cities, its skies filled with the contrails of starships and the shimmering lights of orbital stations. And then, one by one, those lights went out. The seas dried up, the forests withered, and the cities crumbled into dust, their inhabitants long since reduced to nothing but fossilized bones and faded memories. And here's the thing, we might have already found one of these forgotten worlds. Take Venus, for example. Today, it's a hellish nightmare of crushing atmospheric pressure and searing heat, its surface hot enough to melt lead. But some scientists believe that billions of years ago, Venus might have had a much more Earth-like climate, with oceans, mild temperatures, and a thick, life-supporting atmosphere. If that's true, it's entirely possible that some form of life once thrived there, building its own civilizations before the planet's runaway greenhouse effect transformed it into the inferno it is today. It's a sobering thought, the idea that Venus might be a kind of cosmic cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most vibrant, life-filled worlds can fall silent if the balance of their ecosystems is upset. And then there's the even wilder speculation that some of the rogue planets drifting through interstellar space might once have been the homes of ancient civilizations. These are planets that were ejected from their parent star systems by gravitational interactions or cosmic catastrophes, now wandering the darkness between the stars like lost souls. Imagine a world that once basked in the warm glow of its sun, its cities alive with the pulse of sentient life, now forever trapped in the freezing, lightless void, its forgotten streets covered in the ice of eternal night. Of course, all of this is just speculation for now. We have no solid evidence that any of these planets ever hosted intelligent life, let alone advanced civilizations. But the mere possibility is enough to give you chills, isn't it? The thought that the galaxy might be filled with these lost, forgotten worlds, ancient graves where the echoes of long-dead races still linger, their final monuments slowly crumbling under the weight of 1 billion years of silence. It's a humbling reminder of just how small and fleeting our own place in the universe really is. We might one day build our own cities on the surfaces of alien worlds, planting our flags and carving our names into the rocks, but in the end, even those achievements will one day turn to dust, just like the forgotten empires that came before us. All right, if we're talking about the echoes of ancient civilizations, we have to confront one of the most chilling possibilities. The idea that there might be entire regions of the galaxy littered with the ruins of long-dead empires. It's a haunting image, isn't it? Vast, empty systems where the stars themselves have gone cold, their planets nothing more than frozen tombs drifting silently through the void. I can't help but wonder if civilizations have risen and fallen throughout galactic history. Where are their remains? Could it be that we're just not looking in the right places? Or is it that the galaxy itself is one massive graveyard, its ruins buried under layers of dust and cosmic debris? One of the most compelling ideas is that some of the strangest stellar formations we've observed might actually be remnants of cataclysmic events, colossal wars or cosmic disasters that wiped entire civilizations from existence. Imagine a region of space where the stars seem oddly dim, their light filtered through vast clouds of dust and debris. Some astronomers have speculated that these dark nebulae might be the scattered remnants of planets obliterated in ancient conflicts, their shattered fragments still drifting through space like the bones of some colossal, long-dead beast. If a war ever took place on that scale, the evidence would be almost impossible to miss. Entire star systems wiped clean of life, their planets reduced to asteroid fields and gas clouds. And it's not just about catastrophic destruction. Some of the more intriguing theories involve the idea of abandoned megastructures, colossal space stations, or artificial planets left to drift through the void after their builders perished. There's something almost tragic about the thought, isn't there? These vast constructs, once teeming with life, now slowly crumbling as the galaxy moves on without them. We've spotted a few anomalies that make you wonder, objects that seem too regular, too structured to be purely natural. Could some of them be the remains of orbital habitats or ancient industrial complexes, now devoid of purpose, their once thriving populations long gone? And then there's the possibility of entire planets being left behind. Worlds that once supported complex ecosystems and civilizations, but are now nothing more than barren wastelands. We found planets with oddly high concentrations of heavy metals or strange patterns in their surface geology that hint at massive industrial activity in the distant past. Maybe these are the relics of mining operations on a planetary scale, where the resources were stripped bare before the civilization responsible collapsed. It's a grim fate to imagine, a world used up, its very bones dug out, and then abandoned when nothing of value remained. One of the most evocative concepts is the idea of rogue planets, worlds that have been ejected from their home systems, sent careening through the galaxy like wandering ghosts. If a civilization were powerful enough to manipulate planetary orbits, it might have sent some of its worlds drifting into interstellar space as a desperate measure, perhaps to escape a cataclysm or as a last-ditch effort to preserve their culture. These planets, now dark and frozen, could still carry traces of their former inhabitants. Underground shelters, vast archives, or the remains of long-dormant machines, waiting for the day when someone finally discovers them. And it's not just planets. Whole star clusters might bear the scars of long-dead civilizations. Some theorists have suggested that unusually tight clusters of neutron stars or black holes might be the remnants of star systems where the inhabitants tried to manipulate stellar evolution perhaps in a doomed effort to stave off extinction or harness cosmic energy. If that's the case, those dense, gravitationally chaotic regions might be the galactic equivalent of a battlefield cemetery, where the stars themselves are the only remaining witnesses to a tragedy that unfolded millions or even billions of years ago. Of course, it's all speculation at this point. We've barely explored our own galactic neighborhood, let alone the vast stretches where these so-called stellar graveyards might be hiding. But there's something profoundly humbling about the idea that we could be wandering through the remains of civilizations far older than ours without even realizing it. Maybe one day we'll stumble upon undeniable proof, a derelict station orbiting a long-dead star, its corridors still echoing with the memories of those who once called it home. Or maybe we'll find nothing, just the silence of the cosmos, reminding us that even the mightiest civilizations eventually fade into nothingness. But I can't help but hope that someday, somewhere, we'll find one of these forgotten places and unlock its secrets. Maybe it will remind us that our own existence is just a fleeting moment in the grand tapestry of the universe. A reminder that even the brightest stars eventually burn out, leaving only whispers and dust behind. It's a thought that makes you feel small, but also strangely connected to the endless, unfolding story of the galaxy. All right, if we've been talking about the echoes of long-dead civilizations, the whispers of ancient empires still drifting through the darkness, then we have to ask the next logical question. Can we actually recover these lost songs? Is it possible to reach back across the eons and decode the final messages of species that vanished before our planet even cooled? It's a daunting challenge, but also an incredibly exciting one. After all, the idea that we might one day crack the cosmic equivalent of an ancient record and hear the voices of the long dead is the kind of thing that keeps astronomers and SETI enthusiasts up at night. First, we have to consider the medium. If we're talking about electromagnetic signals, then the odds might not be as bad as they seem. Radio waves, for example, can travel vast distances through space without losing much of their original structure, provided they're not absorbed by gas clouds or disrupted by gravitational fields. It's a bit like tossing a message in a bottle into the ocean. The signal might be distorted or weakened over time, but it can still make it to another shore if the currents are right. In fact, some have even suggested that certain kinds of signals, like tightly focused laser pulses or directed gravitational waves, might be even better suited for long-term transmission, their information packed into incredibly dense, tightly controlled bursts. And then there's the question of format. Even if we do manage to pick up a signal from a long-dead species, how would we make sense of it? It's one thing to receive a radio pulse from deep space. It's another thing entirely to decode it into something meaningful. We'd have to figure out the language, the math, the very thought processes of a species that might have evolved in a completely different environment, with senses and perceptions unlike anything we can imagine. It's a bit like trying to decode an ancient text without a Rosetta Stone, a task that seems almost impossible, but not completely without hope. Some have speculated that we might be able to use artificial intelligence to bridge this gap, training neural networks to recognize patterns in the incoming data and slowly tease out its underlying structure. It's a bit like what we're already doing with the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, using machine learning algorithms to sift through mountains of radio data in search of anything that stands out as unnatural. If we can train these systems to recognize the subtle fingerprints of artificial signals, the kinds of regular, structured pulses that stand out from the chaotic background noise of the universe, then we might one day be able to reconstruct the final transmissions of species long dead. And there's also the possibility that some of these ancient messages might be encoded in ways we haven't even considered yet. Maybe they're hidden in the chemical composition of certain stars, or in the subtle variations in the cosmic microwave background radiation, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang itself. Or maybe they're encoded in gravitational waves, their information folded into the very fabric of space-time, like the grooves on a vinyl record. It's a mind-bending thought, The idea that the universe itself might carry the faint, lingering echoes of forgotten songs, waiting for someone clever enough to decode them. Of course, even if we do manage to pick up one of these signals and crack its code, we'd still have to deal with the even trickier problem of interpretation. Without context, without a shared frame of reference, it's hard to imagine how we'd ever really understand what these messages meant to their creators. It's a bit like finding an ancient, undeciphered language carved into a rock. You can figure out the grammar and the syntax, but without the cultural context, the deeper meanings remain frustratingly out of reach. But that's part of the challenge, isn't it? The idea that we might one day be able to reach back across the gulf of time and space to hear the final thoughts of a species that perished billions of years ago is both humbling and inspiring. It's a reminder that our own civilization is just a tiny blip in the grand tapestry of cosmic history, a brief, flickering flame that will one day be extinguished, leaving only the faintest of echoes behind. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Maybe the simple act of reaching out, of trying to make our mark on the universe, is what really matters in the end. After all, isn't that what we're doing every time we send out a radio transmission or launch a spacecraft into the void? We're adding our own small voices to the great ongoing symphony of the cosmos, hoping that someone, somewhere, might one day hear us and understand. All right, if we've been talking about the potential for finding the echoes of long-dead civilizations, their songs, their machines, their very worlds left behind in the cold emptiness of space, then we have to confront a more practical and, frankly, a more unsettling question. What do we do if we actually find one of these relics? How should we prepare for that moment, and what are the ethical implications of interacting with the remains of a civilization that might have perished millions or even billions of years ago? First of all, there's the obvious question of risk. As romantic as it might sound to discover an ancient alien probe or a crumbling orbital habitat, we have to remember that whatever technology we stumble upon might be fundamentally incompatible with our own biology and physics. It's one thing to find a derelict spacecraft. It's another thing entirely to activate a piece of forgotten technology that could accidentally rip a hole in space-time or trigger a chain reaction that sterilizes a star system. We have no way of knowing what kind of safety protocols, if any, these ancient builders might have included in their designs. Maybe they never imagined that some curious upstart species would come poking around their old ruins, or maybe they left behind automated defenses to prevent exactly that kind of thing. It's a chilling thought, but one we have to take seriously if we want to survive the encounter. And then there's the biological risk. Imagine finding an ancient, long-abandoned world, its surface littered with the remains of a long-dead civilization. Maybe the air is still breathable, the water still drinkable. But what about the microorganisms? What if some of the viruses or bacteria that once thrived there managed to survive the eons, lying dormant in the frozen soil or clinging to the rusting hulls of abandoned starships? We've seen similar things here on Earth, where ancient microbes have been revived after lying dormant for tens of thousands of years. On a galactic scale, the risks could be far greater. It's entirely possible that the first explorers to set foot on an alien world could unleash a pandemic unlike anything humanity has ever faced, simply by disturbing the wrong pile of dust. But let's assume for a moment that we find something relatively safe, a piece of alien technology perhaps, or a digital archive encoded in the light of a distant star. What then? Do we have the right to dissect and study these artifacts, to crack open the sealed data cores of a civilization that might have perished long before our ancestors even learned to walk upright? It's a thorny ethical question, one that touches on everything from the nature of consent to the value of cultural preservation. After all, if we're not careful, we might end up doing to these long-dead species what our own archaeologists once did to the ancient civilizations of Earth, digging up their graves, stripping their tombs of priceless artifacts, and reducing their once proud cultures to mere footnotes in our history books. On the other hand, the potential benefits are hard to ignore. An intact piece of alien technology could revolutionize our understanding of physics, biology, and engineering. It might hold the secrets to faster-than-light travel, to limitless clean energy, or even to the kind of post-scarcity society that has existed only in our wildest sci-fi dreams. It's a tempting prospect, one that might push us to take risks we would otherwise avoid, to crack open the tombs of long-dead civilizations in the hope of finding something that will elevate our own species to the next level of technological and cultural development. And then there's the psychological impact. What would it do to our sense of identity, our place in the universe, if we discovered undeniable proof that we are not alone, that we never were? Would it humble us, force us to reconsider our own brief, violent history in the context of a much larger, older, and more tragic galactic saga? Or would it drive us to even greater heights of ambition, inspiring us to leave our own mark on the cosmos before our own light inevitably fades? It's a lot to think about, and there are no easy answers. But one thing is clear. If we ever do find one of these ancient relics, we'll need to approach it with caution, humility, and a deep respect for the dead. After all, if these lost civilizations were anything like us, they probably hoped that someone, someday, would find their last desperate messages, that their voices, however faint, would still be heard long after they themselves had been silenced. And maybe, just maybe, we owe it to them to listen. All right, so where does all of this leave us? We've wandered through the forgotten ruins of ancient megastructures, listened to the faint, ghostly songs of dead stars, and imagined entire planets reduced to little more than drifting tombstones in the cold vacuum of space. We've speculated about the final desperate broadcasts of civilizations long gone, their last messages still echoing across the dark, empty void, and we've asked ourselves what we would do if we ever stumbled upon one of these ancient relics. If we ever looked up at the night sky and realized that the lights we see are not just stars, but the cold, silent memorials of species that reached for the stars and failed. And that, I think, is what makes this topic so profoundly moving. It's not just about the science or the technology, it's about the stories, the hopes and dreams of beings we will never meet, whose faces we will never see, but whose final whispers might still reach us if we listen hard enough. It's the ultimate reminder of our own fragility, our own smallness in the face of a universe that is both unimaginably vast and deeply, profoundly indifferent to our survival. But at the same time, it's also a kind of inspiration, isn't it? The idea that even after a civilization has burned itself out, after its cities have crumbled to dust and its people have faded into nothingness, some small part of it might still survive. A signal, a monument, a half-buried data archive on a forgotten moon. It's a reminder that, for all our flaws, we are part of something much larger than ourselves, a cosmic story that stretches back billions of years and will continue long after our own sun has gone dark. And who knows? Maybe one day, 1,000,000 years from now, some other species will find the Voyager probes, still drifting through the black, their golden records carrying the songs of Earth, the crackling voices of long-dead humans speaking in a dozen languages, their hopes and fears etched into the grooves of a tiny spinning disk. Maybe they'll decode our final messages and wonder who we were, what we believed in, and why we reached out into the darkness, hoping that someone somewhere would listen. So if you've made it this far, if you're as fascinated by these cosmic mysteries as I am, then stick around. Hit that subscribe button, join this little community of dreamers and stargazers, and let's keep exploring the strangest, most beautiful corners of the universe together. Because in the end, that's what makes us human. Our endless curiosity, our desire to understand the unknown, and our refusal to go quietly into the dark. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.